The great hall of the Kelthoran High Council buzzed with tension. Tall warriors in ceremonial armor lined the walls, their hands resting on the hilts of their curved blades. At the center of the room, Commander Zara stood with perfect posture, her purple skin gleaming under the crystal lights. Her silver hair was braided with honor beads that marked her victories in battle. She wore the deep blue robes of her rank, but today she felt like she was fighting the hardest battle of her life. "Commander Zara," spoke Elder Torvin from his stone throne. His voice carried the weight of centuries. "You stand before this council to defend a choice that brings shame to our people. Explain why you have bonded with this human." Beside Zara stood Ben, a man of average height with brown hair and kind eyes. He wore simple trader clothes, a gray tunic, and dark pants that looked plain next to the rich fabrics of the Kelthoran nobles. His hands were calloused from honest work, not from holding weapons. He kept his eyes down and said nothing, just as he always did in these formal meetings. "Honored elders," Zara began, her voice steady and strong. "I have chosen Ben as my life partner because he brings honor to our union in ways that matter more than what meets the eye." Some of the younger warriors shook their heads. General Kavik, Zara's former teacher, looked disappointed. His scarred face showed years of battles, won through strength and fury. "What honor can this soft creature bring?" General Kavik asked, standing from his seat. "Our people are known across the galaxy as the greatest warriors. Our blades have tasted victory on 1,000 worlds. Our ancestors built this empire with blood and steel, and you bring us a trader who sells vegetables and grain?" More whispers filled the hall. Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her calm. Ben remained still beside her, showing no sign that the insults affected him. "Ben has shown me strength in different ways," Zara replied. "He works harder than any person I have known. He solves problems with his mind rather than his fists. He treats all beings with respect, whether they are powerful or weak." Elder Torvin raised his hand for silence. "These are fine qualities for a farmer or a merchant, but they are not the qualities we seek in those who join our bloodlines. Tell us, human, why should we accept you as one of us?" All eyes turned to Ben. He looked up slowly, meeting the elder's gaze with quiet dignity. "I do not ask to be accepted, honored elder. I only ask to be allowed to love Zara and support her in whatever way I can. If that brings shame to your people, then I will accept that burden." The simplicity of his words seemed to surprise some of the council members. But General Kavik stepped forward, his hand moving to his sword. "You see? He speaks of accepting shame rather than fighting to prove his worth. This is not our way. Our way is to show strength, to prove ourselves in combat, to earn respect through action." "General Kavik speaks truth," said another elder. "The Kelthoran Empire has stood for 3,000 years because we choose our bonds carefully. We join with those who make us stronger, not weaker." Zara's jaw tightened. "With respect, honored ones, you judge Ben without truly knowing him. You see only his quiet manner and assume it means weakness. But I have seen him work for days without rest to help strangers. I have watched him solve trade disputes that warriors could not settle with their swords. I have seen him show courage in his own way." "What courage?" General Kavik demanded. "What battles has he won? What enemies has he defeated? Show us his scars, Commander. Show us proof of his warrior's heart." Ben stepped forward slightly. His voice was calm and even. "I carry no battle scars, General. I have never killed anyone. I do not seek glory in combat. If these things make me unworthy of Zara's love, then I will accept your judgment and leave this world." The hall fell silent. Many of the warriors looked shocked by Ben's honesty. In Kelthoran culture, admitting you had never fought was like admitting you had never truly lived. But Zara moved to stand closer to Ben. "He speaks truth because he is honest. He does not lie or boast to impress anyone. This is why I love him. In a galaxy full of those who claim strength they do not have, Ben claims nothing and gives everything."
Elder
Torvin studied them both for a long moment. "Commander Zara, you have served our people well for many years. Your sword has brought honor to your family name. But this choice troubles us deeply. Marriage is not just about love. It is about continuing our traditions, our strength, our way of life. Then give us a chance to prove that our bond will honor those traditions, Zara said. Allow us to be married during the bonding festival next month. If Ben shows himself unworthy during the celebrations, I will accept your judgment. The elders spoke among themselves in low voices. Finally, Elder Torvin nodded. Very well. You may proceed with your bonding ceremony during the festival. But know this, we will be watching. All of our people will be watching. If this human brings shame to our traditions, the consequences will be severe. As they left the council chamber, Zara could feel the eyes of every warrior upon them. Some looked curious, others angry, most just confused. She had been one of their best commanders, winner of the Silver Blade tournament 3 years running. Her choice to marry a human traitor made no sense to them. The weeks that followed were difficult. Everywhere they went in the capital city, people stared and whispered. Some were polite, but cold. Others made cruel jokes when they thought Zara could not hear. The other warriors in her unit treated Ben with barely hidden contempt. Through it all, Ben remained patient and kind. He continued his work managing agricultural trade routes between the Keltheran worlds and the outer colonies. He learned the names of everyone he met, remembered details about their families, and always offered help when someone needed it. One afternoon, Zara found him in their apartment, reading from a thick book written in ancient Keltheran script. "What are you studying?" she asked, settling beside him on their simple couch. "The history of your people's blade traditions," Ben replied, showing her the pages covered with diagrams of sword forms and battle techniques. "I want to understand what matters to you and your family." Zara felt warmth spread through her chest. "You do not need to study these things for me. I want to," Ben said simply. "If I am to be part of your world, I should know its ways. Even if I cannot be a warrior myself, I can at least understand what makes warriors who they are." She leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid comfort of his presence. "Do you ever regret this? Choosing to marry into a culture that does not welcome you?" Ben closed the book and turned to look at her. "Never. You are worth any amount of difficulty. And perhaps someday, I can find a way to contribute something valuable to your people." The bonding festival arrived with great celebration. The capital city filled with visitors from across the Keltheran Empire. Colorful banners hung from every building. The smell of roasted meat and sweet pastries drifted through the streets. Musicians played traditional songs while dancers moved through the crowds in elaborate costumes. The ceremony itself took place in the ancient Temple of Bonds, a massive stone building that had stood for over 1,000 years. Hundreds of guests filled the circular chamber, including many of the most important families in the empire. Elder Torvin performed the ritual himself, binding Zara and Ben's hands with golden cord while speaking the sacred words. "By blade and blood, by honor and heart, you are now joined as one," the elder intoned. "May your bonds strengthen both your houses and bring glory to our people." As they exchanged the traditional kisses and raised their joined hands, polite applause filled the temple. But Zara could see the doubt in many faces. They were going through the motions out of respect for her rank. It's not because they believed in this union. The celebration feast that followed was held in the great plaza outside the temple. Long tables groaned under the weight of traditional foods. Warriors competed in friendly duels, while children ran between the adults, laughing and playing. The mood was festive, but Zara noticed that she and Ben sat at their table mostly alone. Few people approached them to offer congratulations. General Kavik did stop by their table, but his words were cold. "I hope you have chosen well, Commander. The honor of our people rests partly in your hands now." Ben stood and bowed respectfully. "I will do my best not to disappoint you, General." Kavik looked him up and down with obvious skepticism, then walked away without another word. As the sun began to set, the celebration continued with traditional music and dancing. Zara and Ben joined in when custom required it, but she could feel the eyes of everyone upon them. Her husband moved carefully through the crowd, speaking politely to anyone who addressed him, never pushing himself forward or trying to be the center of attention. That was when the sky began to darken with more than just the coming night at first. It looked like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. But as the shadows grew larger and moved with too much purpose, a chill ran through the crowd. Someone pointed upward and shouted in alarm, "Ships! Warships!" The festive music stopped abruptly. People looked up to see hundreds of dark vessels descending through the atmosphere like hungry birds. Their hulls were black and scarred from countless battles. Evil red lights pulsed along their sides. Everyone in the plaza recognized the terrible sight. "The Shadow Fleet," someone whispered, and the words spread through the crowd like fire. Panic erupted instantly. The Shadow Fleet had not been seen in this sector for over 5 years. But their reputation for brutality was known throughout the galaxy. They destroyed cities for sport and took prisoners to sell in slave markets. No world was safe when they appeared. All warriors to defensive positions. General Kavik's voice boomed over the chaos. "Protect the civilians. Get everyone to the shelters." The plaza turned into a swirling mass of running people. Parents grabbed their children. Elderly citizens moved as quickly as they could toward the underground bunkers. Warriors ran toward the weapon caches, shedding their ceremonial robes for battle armor. Zara felt her training take over. "Ben, go to the eastern shelter," she commanded, already moving toward her own weapons. "Stay with the other non-combatants. I have to join the defense." But when she turned to make sure he had heard her, Ben was nowhere to be seen. In the chaos and confusion, her husband had simply vanished. A cold fear gripped her heart. Had he run away in terror? Had he abandoned her and their people when real danger arrived? The thought made her sick. But there was no time to search for him now. The first explosion shook the city as the Shadow Fleet began their attack. Zara ran toward the armory, her mind split between tactical thoughts and worry about Ben. Around her, the greatest warriors in the galaxy prepared for battle. But she wondered if they would be enough against such overwhelming numbers. The wedding celebration had become a nightmare, somewhere in the chaos. Her quiet husband had disappeared when his people needed him most. The first wave of enemy fire hit the outer city walls like thunder from an angry sky. Zara sprinted through the armory, grabbing her battle gear with practiced speed. Her ceremonial robes fell to the floor as she pulled on her combat armor. The silver plates felt familiar and comforting against her skin. She strapped her curved blade to her side and checked her energy rifle. Around her, dozens of other warriors did the same. "Status report." She shouted to Lieutenant Kren, who was coordinating the defense from a communication station. 47 enemy ships confirmed," Kren replied, his face grim. "They are using siege formation. Heavy bombardment followed by ground assault. The outer settlements are already under attack." Zara felt her heart sink. The Shadow Fleet never attacked with fewer than 100 ships unless they were supremely confident. 47 vessels meant they believed the Keltheran defenses were weak enough to crush with a smaller force. "What about our orbital platforms?" she asked. "Destroyed in the first strike," Kren said. "They hit us during the festival when most of our fleet was docked for maintenance." It was planned perfectly. The sound of explosions grew closer. Through the armory windows, Zara could see fires beginning to spread through the residential districts. Enemy fighters swept through the sky, their weapons cutting deadly lines through the air. General Kavik burst into the armory, his own armor hastily assembled. "All units to the main plaza. We make our stand at the temple complex. The underground tunnels will protect the civilians, but we need to keep the enemy from reaching them." As they rushed back outside, Zara found herself thinking about Ben again. Where had he gone? Was he safe in one of the shelters? Part of her felt angry that he had vanished when danger came, but another part worried that something terrible had happened to him. The plaza where they had celebrated, just hours before, was now a battlefield. Overturned tables provided cover for Keltheran soldiers. The beautiful decorations hung in tatters. Scorch marks blackened the ancient stones. Above them, enemy ships circled like predators, raining down laser fire. "Take positions behind the fountain," General Kavik commanded. "First squad, focus on the landing craft. Second squad, watch for ground troops." Zara dove behind a marble barrier just as enemy bolts sizzled through the air where she had been standing. She raised her rifle and fired back at the dark shapes moving through the smoke. Her shots were accurate, but but there were so many enemies that each one she hit barely made a difference. The Shadow Fleet soldiers were brutal fighters. They wore black armor that absorbed light, making them hard to see. Their weapons were designed to cause maximum pain before death. They fought without honor or mercy, using numbers and fear as their primary weapons. "Commander," Lieutenant Kren called out from behind a collapsed statue. "The eastern wall has been breached. They are pouring through in waves." Zara gritted her teeth and fired another burst at the advancing enemies. How many? At least 300 ground troops, with more landing every minute. The math was simple and terrifying. The Kel'Thuran defenders numbered maybe 200 warriors total, and many of those were still getting into position. Against experienced raiders with superior numbers, their chances looked grim. "Where are the reinforcements from the outer garrisons?" General Kavik demanded. "Cut off," came the reply from another soldier. "The enemy has blockaded all approach routes. We are on our own." A massive explosion shook the entire plaza. One of the enemy ships had landed directly on the temple steps, crushing ancient stone under its weight. Dozens of Shadow Fleet soldiers poured out of its cargo bay, their weapons already firing. "Fall back to the secondary positions," Kavik ordered. "Fighting withdrawal." But as they moved, Zara realized their situation was becoming hopeless. More enemy ships were landing all around them. The sky was dark with hostile craft. For every raider they managed to stop, 3 more took his place. A bolt of energy struck the ground next to her, sending chips of stone flying. She rolled behind another piece of cover and checked her weapon's power level. Half depleted already, and the battle had barely begun. "Commander Zara." A young warrior named Finn called out desperately. "We cannot hold this position much longer." She looked around at her people. These were some of the finest fighters in the galaxy, warriors who had trained their entire lives for battle. But they were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers and firepower. Their ceremonial weapons, designed for honor duels and traditional combat, seemed inadequate against the enemy's brutal technology. That was when she saw him at first. It was just a glimpse of movement near the temple entrance. A lone figure walked calmly through the chaos, seemingly unaffected by the laser fire and explosions around him. Zara blinked. Sure, she was seeing things wrong, but it was definitely Ben. Her husband moved with purpose toward the temple's inner sanctum. He no longer wore his simple trader clothes. Instead, he was dressed in plain dark clothing that allowed him to blend with the shadows. In his hands, he carried something that made Zara's breath catch in her throat. It was the blade of First Honor, the most sacred weapon in all of Kel'Thuran history. The ancient sword had been sealed in the temple for generations, taken out only for the most important ceremonies. Legends said it had been forged by the first Kel'Thuran warriors and blessed with their spirits. How did he get that weapon? General Kavik gasped, noticing Ben at the same moment before anyone could answer. Ben moved into action. He stepped out from behind cover and walked directly toward the nearest group of Shadow Fleet soldiers. They saw him coming and raised their weapons, clearly amused by this foolish human, who thought he could fight them with an old sword. The first raider fired a burst of energy bolts directly at Ben's chest. But the human moved like flowing water, stepping aside from the shots with minimal effort. The sword in his hand seemed to sing as it cut through the air, deflecting 2 more bolts back toward their sources. The blade found the first enemy with surgical precision. One smooth stroke, and the raider fell without a sound. Ben was already moving to the next target before the body hit the ground. What followed was the most incredible display of swordsmanship Zara had ever witnessed. Ben flowed between the enemy soldiers like a dancer, his movements so perfectly timed that their superior numbers worked against them. When they tried to surround him, he used their own positions to block their shots. When they rushed him all at once, turned their momentum into weapons against themselves. The ancient blade moved faster than the eye could follow. It parried energy bolts, cut through armor, and struck with deadly accuracy. But more than the physical technique, it was Ben's tactical awareness that amazed everyone watching. He seemed to know exactly where each enemy would move before they moved. He anticipated their strategies and countered them perfectly. "Possible," General Kavik whispered. No one fights like that. Not even our greatest masters. Within minutes, Ben had cleared an entire section of the plaza. The Shadow Fleet soldiers, who had seemed so confident, began to show signs of uncertainty. They had never faced an opponent who could make their advance. Weapons looked useless. But Ben was just getting started. He moved toward the main enemy formation, where their commander was directing the assault from behind a portable shield generator. The raider leader was a massive creature with scars covering his face and arms that showed he had survived countless battles. "Kill that human," the commander roared. All units focus fire on the swordsman. Dozens of weapons turned toward Ben. Energy bolts filled the air like a deadly storm. Any normal person would have been vaporized instantly. Ben closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he began to move. He flowed between the laser bursts like they were standing still. His sword deflected shots with impossible precision, sending them back toward his enemies or redirecting them harmlessly into the ground. He advanced steadily toward the commander, cutting down anyone who got in his way. The Keltheran warriors watched in stunned silence. This was beyond anything in their fighting traditions. Ben was using techniques they had never seen, combinations of movement and timing that seemed to come from a completely different understanding of combat. "How is this possible?" Lieutenant Kren asked. "Where did a traitor learn to fight like that?" Zara found her voice. "He studied our histories. I saw him reading about blade techniques, but I thought it was just academic interest." "This is not just study," General Kavik said slowly. "This is mastery beyond anything our schools teach." Ben reached the enemy commander and paused for a moment, the ancient sword held ready. The raider leader was twice his size and carried weapons that could have leveled a building. But there was something in Ben's stance that made the massive warrior take a step backward. "You are not what you appear to be. Human," the commander said, his voice carrying across the plaza. "Neither are any of us," Ben replied calmly. "We all choose what we show the world." The commander attacked with brutal force, swinging a weapon that hummed with deadly energy. Ben moved aside so smoothly that the strike seemed to pass through empty air. His counterstrike was gentle, almost casual. But it found the exact spot where the enemy's armor was weakest. The Shadow Fleet commander fell, and with him, the morale of his entire force. Seeing their leader defeated by a single human with an ancient sword, the remaining raiders began to retreat. Some fled back to their ships. Others threw down their weapons and surrendered. Within the space of an hour, the seemingly hopeless battle had turned into a complete victory. As the smoke cleared and the enemy ships departed, Ben stood alone in the center of the plaza. The sacred sword hung at his side, its blade clean and bright. He looked tired but not injured. The Keltheran warriors approached him slowly, as if he might vanish like a dream. General Kavik was the first to speak. "How?" was all he managed to say. Ben looked up at them with the same quiet expression he had always worn. "I have been studying your ways for 3 years. Not just reading about them, but practicing them. Every night, in private, I work to understand what it means to be a warrior. But where did you learn such techniques?" Zara asked, moving closer to her husband. "Some of those moves were not in any of our books." Ben smiled slightly. "That is true. I combined your blade traditions with things I learned from my own people. Humans have our own fighting arts, developed over thousands of years. I thought perhaps they could complement each other." Elder Torvin, who had survived the battle in one of the underground shelters, emerged to hear this explanation. His ancient face showed wonder and respect. "Created something new," the elder said slowly. "You took our traditions and made them stronger by adding your own knowledge." "I tried to honor both heritages," Ben said. "I wanted to find a way to contribute something valuable to your people as I promised." General Kavik stepped forward and did something that shocked everyone present. He knelt before Ben and bowed his head. "I was wrong about you," the general said. "You are not weak. You are not a coward. You are something I have never seen before. A warrior who fights not for glory or conquest, but to protect those he loves." One by one, the other Keltheran fighters followed the general's example. They knelt before the quiet human who had saved their city and their people. Ben looked uncomfortable with the attention. "Please," Get up. I am no different than I was before. I am still just a trader who loves Zara." "No," Elder Torvin said, his voice filled with conviction. "You are much more than that. You have shown us that strength comes in many forms. That wisdom can be more powerful than aggression. That the greatest warriors are those who fight for others, not for themselves." Zara moved to stand beside her husband, taking his hand in hers. "I always knew you were special, but even I did not imagine this." Ben squeezed her hand gently. "I wanted to be worthy of you. I wanted to find a way to bring honor to your family name. When I studied your people's history, I learned that the greatest Kel'Thuran warriors were not just fighters, they were protectors. I thought perhaps I could be that kind of warrior too." The celebration that followed was very different from the wedding feast earlier that day. This time, when people gathered around Ben and Zara, it was with genuine respect and admiration. Warriors who had dismissed him as weak now asked to learn from him. Young Kel'Thurans, who had mocked his quiet manner now, listened carefully to his words. "Will you teach us these new techniques?" Lieutenant Kren asked eagerly. "Will you stay and help train our defenders?" added another soldier. Ben looked around at all the hopeful faces. "If you will have me, I would be honored to share what I know. But remember, the techniques are not what made the difference today. What mattered was the willingness to stand up for what is right, even when the odds seem impossible." As the night wore on and the city began to rebuild from the attack, Zara found herself thinking about how much her life had changed in just one day. She had begun it defending her choice to marry a quiet human. She was ending it married to a hero who had saved their world. But the most amazing thing was that Ben himself had not changed at all. He was still the same kind, thoughtful man who helped others without expecting praise. The only difference was that now everyone else could see what she had known all along. That true strength often comes in quiet packages. The Shadow Fleet attack became legend throughout the galaxy. The story spread of how a single human had turned the tide of battle with nothing but an ancient sword and incredible skill. But for those who were there, the real lesson was simpler. Never judge a person's worth by their appearance or their words alone. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who speak softly and fight only when they must. Ben and Zara's marriage became a symbol of how different peoples could learn from each other and become stronger together. And whenever young Kel'Thuran warriors asked about the secret of becoming truly powerful, their teachers would tell them about the human who studied in silence, practiced in private, and emerged when needed to protect those he loved, the quiet ones. They learned were often the most dangerous of all.